Hi everyone, today we're going to look at working with SDL2. This video is specifically going to talk about getting started. So let's do that. If you go under, I don't have a terminal down here, so I'm going to go under New Terminal so that I get a terminal. First thing I'm going to do is install all the packages I'm going to need. Now I am doing this on Ubuntu. Well, actually it's Linux Mint, but it's derived from Ubuntu, which is derived from Debian and so on and so forth. Purpose of the story is I use apt as my package manager. So if you're on a different system, you might need to adjust for that. And we're going to install library SDL2-DEV. Hitting tab twice will, once will autocomplete, and if nothing happens, if you hit it twice, it'll give you all the options like we saw here with -dev or -doc. We're also going to do SDL2 TTF DEV. We're going to also include G++. We will be compiling with GNU. We'll use GDB so that we can debug our code. We're also going to include CMake. Not quite sure why that's capitalized. There we go. We're going to add Ninja Build and package config. Now, I should have all these already installed, and I do. However, you may not, especially these first two. And actually, I will add one more, Build Essential. Yes, I have that as well. All right, so now you should have all these packages on your machine. There's also some Visual Studio Code extensions that I would recommend. This is Visual Studio Code that I will be using, so if you want to follow along in the same environment, go get that. You can get that from their website. It's fairly straightforward. You just download it and install it. If you're on Windows, I would recommend getting the Windows subsystem for Linux. That way you can actually basically run Ubuntu on Windows. You don't need to download a cross compiler and all sorts of other fun wonky things. We're in the age now where Linux runs on Windows fairly well. So I would recommend that. If Windows users have trouble with that, I may do a video then on how to get it up and running on Windows. But anyway, when we look at the extensions here, you will see I have the CMake extension, CMake tools from Microsoft. I would recommend getting that, as well as this one. This will allow you to highlight your code as you're typing in CMake things. I'd also recommend the Microsoft C++ extensions, which is this one right here, the extension pack. It'll automatically install these other extensions. And we're also, I'm also going to mention, oh, there's WSL again, but I'm also going to mention, I like the Visual Studio key mapping. It's something I'm used to. I like things like Control-D for duplicating lines and things like that. Purely optional, but like I say on all my videos, this whole video is optional. You can do what I tell you to or not. It doesn't really matter. I'm not holding a gun to your head. All right. So our project today is we're going to create an SDL2 window and show it for 5 seconds. I will warn you, this window will not be super pretty or anything like that, but it will show that we have everything up and running. So let's do that. I'm going to add a new file. I will call it main.cpp. And for my main CPP, we're going to include SDL2 SDL.h. This is what will be added when you install this library SDL2-dev. It will add this header file for you, so you're able to add this. We're going to do a little command line outputting as well. We'll do IO stream. And then for our int main function, we will start by initializing the SDL video capabilities. So I'm going to do SDL init, and we're going to do SDL init video. And we'll say if it doesn't equal 0, that's an error. And our error, we'll just do standard cout. We'll say display my error, and we will do SDL get error. All right. Otherwise, run our code. So I highly recommend looking at SDL's documentation. Now this is actually for SDL1. The page for SDL2 isn't created yet, which is sort of ironic because SDL3 is in the works. So documentation's always hard to maintain. I can't really give them any flack for that. However, I would look at the documentation for SDL2. It's out here on librarysdl.org primarily, and then if you can't find it there, the older documentation might cover some of the specific edge cases. Google will tell you. Go look on Google, it'll find it for you. So if we look at this real quick, we can see that SDL init accepts different flags, and the flag we're doing is the video subsystem. And what this allows you to get is all of these capabilities for being able to draw things and everything else. Working with surfaces and just everything. So obviously we want that. We're going to be working with video. All right, next, what we're going to do is we're going to start working on creating our window. You can see that there's an SDL create window function. It accepts a title. X and Y are the location on your screen where 0, 0 is going to be this top left-hand corner. As X increases, it will increase widthwise. As Y increases, it will increase downward. Then there's width and height. So that's how wide you want your window and how high you would like your window. You also are capable of doing some of these other things like SDL window position centered. That's handy if you want the window just to be in the center of the screen. Now for the different flags, the one we're going to focus on today is SDL window shown. You can look at the documentation here if there's other things you want to do, like it starting out maximized or full screen desktop resolution. You can go down a rabbit hole very quickly looking at all the different tools and features. SDL2 is a great library, lots of tools, lots of features, lots of capabilities. I'd go into detail of what SDL2 is, but assuming that you actually looked for this video and didn't just stumble across it, I highly doubt that I'm on Google's or YouTube's front page saying, hey, this is a video you might be interested in. I would say that you probably already know some of the abilities of SDL2, and that's why you're here. So we'll save you that. If you do want to know more about it, I would highly recommend going to their website and reading up on it. It's a really handy tool. All right, back to the code. So let's create our window. We saw that as SDL window, and it's a pointer. We'll just call it window for now, and we're going to say we want to create a window. We'll just put it, well, before that, let's just call it testing window, and we'll put it in that top left-hand corner. Let's do 800 by 600 for our width and our height, and this is where we put in that we want the window to be shown. All right, before we do anything else, since this is basically C that we're writing, what we're going to do is include SDL destroy window. And we will destroy our window. Now, we have initialize SDL, which means we also want to be able to quit out of SDL. And if we ran this program immediately, it would show our window for like a microsecond, and then it would destroy it immediately. So we're also going to put in an SDL delay for our 5 seconds. So each one of these is a millisecond. All right, now you might think we're good to go, right? Well, not yet. We need to be able to build this, and there's obviously some dependencies. The primary dependency being on the SDL2 library. We're going to use CMake to handle all this for us. So let's create a new CMake lists txt, and we'll start out with our CMake minimum version required, and we'll put in version. There we go. Oh, come on, autocomplete. There we go. We'll start out with just version 3. That should be good enough. We are required to have a project name. Let's call it SDL test. And let's start making a list of source files. And we'll call it source files, conveniently enough. And main.cpp is the only one that we have. Next, what we're going to do is we will say we want to find a package called SDL2, and it is required. After that, we want to include all of the SDL2 directories for including the header files. That will fix this issue so that it can find it when we include it. So we're going to do include directories. And we're going to include SDL2 include directories. You'll notice that this has a $sign in front of it and it's wrapped in curly braces. That is so that it unpacks all of the things. This is basically a list just like this is, and it will unpack all of those directories. After that, let's do add executable because we want it to be an executable file. Let's use project name for our, instead of typing SDL test over and over and over, let's just include our project name. And we'll unpack all of our source files. This will unpack this list here. Then lastly, we need to actually link the library, and this will be our project name. Oh, come on, autocomplete. Autocomplete really is fighting with me today. There, we got it. And for this, we'll do SDL2 libraries, all caps. And that should do it. So an explanation of what's going on here is the minimum version of CMake will be version 3. Our project is called SDL test. We're including our main CPP file. We're going to find the package SDL2, and it is required for this program to work. For include directories, it's called SDL include directories. It's always basically this name of this package. We'll go here. And if we look at this include, this is what this will fix so that the compiler can find the SDL header file. After that, we say we want to actually compile this into an executable. So on Windows, that's a .exe. Linux doesn't necessarily care about extensions as much, so it's an executable file. It will be named SDL test, and its source file will just be main.cpp. However, as we add things, this list will grow, and it'll automatically manage all that for us. Then lastly, we need to link our libraries. So SDL is a library which contains all of these functions that we want to call. This um, create window and the SDL delay and destroy window. The header file will stub out and say SDL create window exists, SDL delay exists, SDL destroy window exists, but it won't actually have all the code that does things. It'll just say that it exists and it'll be included later. And that's what this linker does, is it actually is all of the code to make the magic happen needs to be linked with our project so that it can use it. So let's just make sure everything's saved here. And we're going to hit F1, or there's another way to bring this up. Is it Control-Shift-P? Yes, it is. I'm actually going to click C++, C edit configurations here. I think that this is handy to have this configuration file. It makes IntelliSense generally work a little bit better. All right, and then what I was actually going to tell you to do is run CMake configure. You can see it just did a bunch of stuff. It checked for our compiler, and it says everything works and everything is there. It says that things were written to the build. So very good. By the first time you run this, it might not automatically know that you want the GCC compiler. And it might do something like this, where it'll say you can scan for different kits, and it'll give you some options. We just quite simply pick GCC. And this is what the CMake tools extension gives you. It gives you the ability to switch between debug modes and release modes for including all the debug information automatically. So this will make your executable larger, but you can step through it line by line. This will strip all that out so that you can't debug it, but you're going to release it so you have the smallest file possible. And then there's other options here as well. This is the compiler that we're using. There's the build button, which we can click right now. Everything built fine. Now we can either click the little bug, which allows us to debug our code, or we can just run our code. So we're going to click the little bug. And you can see here's our window. And it should only show up for about 5 seconds, and then it's gone. Perfect. So everything worked. Our code worked perfect. Let's do a little bit of debugging though, however. So just to show you how this works, if you want to step through your code, and this is probably not new to you, those that have worked with C++ and Visual Studio before, but if we click the little bug, you'll see that it hit our breakpoint. And you do that by just clicking over here on the left-hand side. And now we can actually step through our code line by line. And it created our window. All right, and then we're to the destroy window line. We're going to run through that, and we'll just go all the way to the end of the program now. There's no other breakpoints to hit. So that was a basic way to do this in basically a C-style programming. Personally, I don't like having to remember to destroy things and create them. So I'm going to just quickly show you a way that you can do that in C++, which we're using right here. What we can do is I'm going to just create a class real quick, call it SDL window. And in this class, I'm going to have, it's going to be a public. We're going to put in here just a real simple SDL window. I'm going to put in a constant char star star title. We'll put in here nothing else for now. And we'll just put in here Also an SDL window, a pointer to this. This is clearly going above and beyond anything that you'll probably do. But it just shows you how you can kind of manage these things using classes. We're going to say that we actually can properly initialize it. Our window is going to be SDL create window. We're going to put in here the title that's being passed in, and all the rest of the stuff is just simple copy paste. All right, we're not going to do anything else logic-wise here, so we're just going to tell it to do its thing. And then while it's being destroyed, we're going to say to run SDL destroy window and we're going to pass in our window. And this one actually is, it's a one-liner. We technically could do that, but this is probably going to look a little bit better. So now what we can do with our C++ logic that we have here is we can just say that we want an SDL window. We'll call it my window. We'll pass in a title, which it's angry about for some reason. Why is that? Oh, I hit star twice. There we go. We're just passing my test window. And we're going to put in an SDL delay again. This time we'll do it again for 5 seconds. And we'll run this. Too used to doing everything the hard way, right? So if we run this one now, here's our window. It says my test window. And it should only run for about 5 seconds, and then it goes away. I guess I'll just explain what this is doing real quick. Again, this is all extra credit here at this point. So what we have is inside of our class, we have our window object, or window pointer. When it's first created, we're just passing in a title, and this is initializing our pointer by running the create window function, and it just passes in all the same information that we had before, accepting a title. And then when this object is being destroyed, it'll automatically free our pointer for us. So when we create our SDL window, this is created on the stack. We're initializing it, then we delay. Once it hits this end curly brace, it will get, this object will go out of scope, and therefore it will properly dispose of our window for us. And if we use this going forward, we never have to remember to call destroy window again. It's RAII. I love it. And that is all that I have for you. So if you followed along all the way to this point, you will have all of the packages that you need to run SDL2, all of the extensions that I used here, and we have shown an SDL2 window for 5 seconds. So you're off to a great start, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.